Thank you very much. I'm Chick Krautler. I'm the director at the Atlanta Regional Commission, one of those alphabet soups that was up there on the board. And I don't use PowerPoint, so you'll have to look at me. I want to go back a little bit in history first and give you some perspective. 60 years ago, Atlanta was still a relatively small town, was just breaking out of its small town roots and beginning to develop into into a more metropolitan area. Its leaders recognized then that sound development really needed to be coordinated, and they needed to work cooperatively on those efforts. So we are the first region in the country to establish a publicly funded regional planning commission. At that time it was called the Metropolitan Planning Commission. In 1971 it became the ARC, and it now includes 10 counties as members, but 18 counties in the MPO, which is the transportation planning part of what we do. We are a multi-service organization. We do land use planning, environmental planning, workforce development, aging services, research. So we go across the whole spectrum of activities that regional councils deal with. It was really the vision of the leaders that we had in this region back during that time in the 40s and the 50s in creating things like an international airport out of what was a dirt car racing track, creating a major water supply north of the city that provides now 85% of the water that's used in metropolitan Atlanta, and creating a freeway system. All of these things led to Atlanta becoming the capital of the New South. And it has prospered and grown dramatically, and those of you who took the tour today, even if you did experience a little bit of our congestion, you also experienced a whole lot of the growth and the prosperity that has made this a great community. We are one of the most economically vibrant, one of the fastest growing regions in the country. We added about 1 million people a decade during the 80s and the 90s, and we're on course to do that again in this decade. We forecast, as Steve mentioned 3 years ago, that we would reach 6 million people in this region by 2030. We're just below 4 million now, so that forecast was probably low, and I expect it'll go up when we produce new forecasts later this year. Our population grew by 114,000 people last year alone. Now, it's true that we've got problems in this region, but there is opportunity here and a quality of life here that continues to attract people here in huge numbers. And while some people talk about slowing growth or stopping growth, if we put up a barrier around our 10 counties somehow or another and said nobody could come in, we'd still grow by over 1 million people. Just the natural growth of births over deaths. And while our rapid growth has been good for the economy, it has created challenges, and Steve set those challenges out for you. Traffic congestion, air quality, water supply are significant issues that we have to deal with if we're going to maintain the quality of life and the economy that brought many of us here in the first place. I know that you'll be talking a lot about transportation and a lot about land use on your agenda over the next couple of days, so I'm going to talk briefly about those two issues. Atlanta is the least densely developed major metropolitan area in the country. Still today, many local, I can't read all my writing here. Oh, many local ordinances require separation of activities. You know, that's been typical in metropolitan areas where we want to put all the houses over here and we want to put the office workers over here, we want to put the industrial workers over here, and oh, by the way, in the housing area, we want to have very low density. We've got lots of parts of this region that are still zoned for 1 house per 3 acres, 1 house per 1 acre. And it's all of those things combined that, that have led to much of the congestion that we're faced with. And recognizing as well, as Steve Stansel pointed out, that fully half of the congestion that we experience in this region is from incidents, things that are beyond our control as planners or as transportation developers. It's not just a lack of capacity that creates the problem here, although we do have serious lack of capacity at certain hours of the day and in quite a few different areas. Our existing transportation plan calls for adding capacity to our existing road network where the right-of-way is available. And that's an important issue because we are a fairly well-developed metropolitan area. We haven't opened a new highway in this region since 1987. 1987 was the last time that we opened a new highway anywhere in metropolitan Atlanta. Others that have been proposed have been killed by political opposition, citizen opposition, or the courts. Couple that with the fact that there is little or no opportunity to develop a new major roadway through an already developed metropolitan area. Even when you go out on our fringes, as this Steve was talking about, with the kind of growth in Henry County, I would venture to say it would be very difficult to find the land to build a new highway in the northern part of Henry County. And that's a significant challenge for us. Also, we haven't opened a new MARTA line since the year 2000 and don't have one planned or under development right now. So what are we doing with transportation in this region? There is no silver bullet to solving congestion. We have to understand that it takes a whole spectrum of strategies, some that Steve Stansel's talked about, some that Steve Davis has talked about, and we're trying to do all of them. But from a capacity standpoint, we are adding new lanes on Georgia 400 today. The first phase of an extensive expansion of that roadway. You may have seen, and Steve Stansel talked about the project on I-75 North. That will be a major expansion of that roadway. We'll be adding 2 truck-only toll lanes in both directions and 2 barrier-separated managed lanes in both directions. So 4 additional lanes on a roadway that at some points is 12 lanes wide now. Hopefully that'll be a public-private partnership, but the region is committed to that as perhaps the single highest priority project that we're dealing with. 285 is our perimeter road, our loop road around the city, terribly congested, particularly during rush hour, major route for truck traffic. We are doing unfortunately, that expansion of that system has really been tied up by planning efforts that have drug on for quite a number of years and hopefully are close to the end. GDOT is doing a holistic study of 85 now. It's supposed to be done by the end of this year, when they will have both operational and capacity recommendations that we can begin to move forward. We're spending money on interchange bottlenecks, particularly on the south side, where we can alleviate some congestion by rebuilding exchanges on the interstates. We are studying a system for truck-only toll lanes that Rosa Roundtree will talk to you about tomorrow. In our existing long-range plan, we recognize that the opportunity to build major new roadways is slim. So what we've focused on is what we call a cross-regional grid system. We have pretty good access in Atlanta, north and south. It's the interstates. I don't know that we ever intended for the interstates to be our main street, but that's what they've become. And we don't have very good access for people who are trying to move east and west across the region. But it happens that there's a road network that exists about every 3 to 5 miles as you move from the north end of our region to the south end of our region, that can be upgraded significantly and provide much better transportation, much better connectivity, and much better access, and eliminate a lot of the interstate trips that we deal with today. So that's a big element of what we'd like to see move forward. The Congestion Mitigation Task Force report has been mentioned a couple of times. We will be basing project selection criteria on the Congestion Mitigation Task Force, which puts 70% of the weighting of project analysis on congestion relief, so that we'll know that the projects that we're putting forward when we have limited dollars are those that are going to do the best job at addressing congestion in the shortest period of time. We're also working with transit. Transit is an important element of our overall transportation network. We were the first city in the southeast to develop a public transit rail system when MARTA was designed and back in the 60s. Last year, we created something called a Transportation Planning Board, another alphabet soup. But the important distinction with the Transportation Planning Board is that MARTA has always been a hot-button issue in metropolitan Atlanta. It was designed to be a 5-county system. In their wisdom, the legislature, when they created MARTA, required that voters vote on whether they wanted the system or didn't want the system, and whether they wanted to pay for it or didn't want to pay for it. So 2 of the 5 counties said yes, 3 said no. So we've never built out the entire system, and we've never really had a lot of cooperation between the suburbs that are not served by MARTA and the core counties that are served by MARTA. And what the Transportation Planning Board does is to bring the county commission chairs from all 10 of our urban counties and MARTA and the governor's office together at the same table to talk about and to design in a 2-year period a comprehensive integrated transit system for this entire region. And it is the first time in the history of metropolitan Atlanta that county commission chairs and the chairman of MARTA have sat at the same table to really have a discussion about where transit's going and how transit ought to be provided in this region, and how it ought to be implemented and funded, which are key issues that Steve talked a lot about. Switching quickly to land use, we believe that it is an important element to making sure that the transportation system works properly. You always hear people talking about how you link transportation and land use, and nobody's got a complete answer. but I think we're probably as aggressive at that in this region as any region in the country. We were the first MPO in the country to use federal transportation dollars to directly influence land use decisions. And we did that through a program called the Livable Centers Initiative, where we helped to fund planning studies in town centers, activity centers, to help these areas become more transportation efficient. And in doing that, in doing these studies, then we backed up the studies with transportation dollars that would help implement the transportation infrastructure to implement the studies. And you think about something like that as being something that the city of Atlanta would be very interested in. Decatur, which is right outside of the city, would be very interested in. Surprisingly, we've got 70 communities who have taken advantage of this opportunity, from the smallest community we have in our region as far north in Cherokee County, further north than where Steve lives, to the city of Atlanta, and all the way south, including 2 communities in Steves County, that really are making dramatic changes in the activity centers in those counties through the relatively small investments that we're making, that are leveraging both private investment and local government investment to make these plans work. And we're really proud of that program, and one that is being modeled around the country. We've worked closely with our local governments trying to change those ordinances that have been in place for so long that separate land uses. And we're getting making a lot of progress on mixed-use development in this region. And again, it's not a downtown Atlanta phenomena. We're seeing it all over the region. Most all of the major projects that are being proposed today are mixed use, and that ultimately will reduce car trips, reduce the length of trips, and give people the opportunity to work closer to where they live, and all deal with transportation. Our Envision 6 process that Steve talked about is more than just a long-range plan. We spent a year doing public charrettes, meeting with all of the elected officials throughout the region, talking about people's vision for how we could accommodate 6 million people in this region. Envision 6, envision 6 million people. It's not rocket science, but it was a nice name. And one of the things that we've found is, number one, if we build out the existing comprehensive plans that are in place in our local jurisdictions, we not only will consume all of the green space that's available in this area, but we will create a gridlock that will be simply unmanageable. We've got to find different ways to develop our communities so that we can provide, maintain the quality of life and provide the mobility and accessibility and connectivity that's important to maintaining a good economy. And we think that you do that by adding density in those places where density is appropriate. And that means those areas where the infrastructure exists and can support higher densities. And as remember, I said Atlanta is the least densely populated region in the country. So we've got opportunities to add density in this region in appropriate places, and without overwhelming the system, and in fact making the system work better. And that is one of the things that we're working on with the Envision 6. It basically means trying to accommodate a goodly portion of this new growth in corridors and activity centers where the facilities exist for them now. And it means opening up and letting the marketplace work. The growth that's taken place in Atlanta is being driven by the marketplace looking for choices, people looking for different choices in the way they want to live. Atlanta is growing for the first time in decades, and it's because people don't want to commute long distances. Some people don't want to commute. They want to live close to where they work, and they want to live in an urban environment, and we're trying to provide those choices. Atlanta will always be a fairly low-density metropolitan area, but we think there are regions that can be more dense and can be more efficient. So Benita said, finish up with kind of what's your view? Well, in a nutshell, I think that what we're going to see in Atlanta over the next 20 years is more capacity in our transportation system. We're going to see better connectivity in our transportation system. We are going to have an integrated transit system that serves the entire region and not just the two core counties. And I think we'll see land use strategies that complement the transportation investments that we make in this region. So I appreciate your invitation, and like the others, I'll be glad to answer questions when the time is right, and turn it over now to Emery Morseberger.